Good evening. I see a lot of you have signed on already. Starting or thank you for the chat. A lot of you are responding to the chat. Thank you very much. Shout out to Canada Park. Thanks. And we're going to be starting the program shortly. So please enjoy our slideshow showing you the organizations who are participating. I'll be back. Hi, I see Adams Park has logged in, and we're happy to see you. Shout out to all your neighborhoods. And we'll be back. We'll be starting at 6 o'clock, a little bit after 6. So stay tuned and enjoy our slideshow. Hi, I'm Dr. Felicia. We haven't started our show yet, but our program yet, but it's going to be a few minutes. So we thank you for logging on early and see friends from Bolton Park and Climate Reality Project, and a lot of folks are signing in. So we'll be starting very shortly. Thanks. We'll be starting in a moment. Well, thank you so much. We've got a lot of people signing on. We appreciate you coming, and we'll be right back to start our program.
Atlanta is the city in the forest. Built upon a network of creeks and streams on the banks of the Chattahoochee, with a growing network of parks, trails, and natural spaces that connect communities. Throughout the pandemic, parks and recreation centers emerged as cornerstones of our communities. Under the shade of trees and in our natural and open spaces, we enjoyed fresh air and sunshine and connected with our neighbors, safely and at a distance. More than ever, we recognize trees, waterways, and green spaces as critical infrastructure, foundational components of a healthy, equitable, resilient, and thriving city. Now is the time for a Greenspace mayor to help fulfill this vision for the future of Atlanta. On behalf of tonight's host partners, welcome to the 2021 Mayoral Forum on Greenspace. Tonight, we'll join award-winning journalist and retired WSB Channel 2 news anchor, reporter, producer, and director of editorials and public affairs, Jocelyn Dorsey, to learn how each candidate's administration will value, manage, grow, and preserve Atlanta's defining natural resources in the years to come. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for voting.
Good evening. I am so excited to be with all of you tonight to explore a topic that is dear to each one of us and so important for the quality of life that we enjoy in Atlanta, our green space, the trees at our homes and the beautiful canopy all around us, the parks and trails that connect the city, and the creeks and streams that run to the Chattahoochee River. Tonight, I am joined by 10 candidates who each believe they have what it takes to be Atlanta's next mayor. And we'll spend the better part of the next 2 hours getting into why they think they are the green space champion that we're looking for. I am very sorry to report that Council members Antonio Brown and Andre Dickens, as well as Council President Felicia Moore, were scheduled to participate this evening, but are unable to do so because of an important vote in City Council regarding the new police training facility at the old Atlanta prison farm. So not to worry, because though they are not here, they are at their campaigns. We have talked to their campaigns, and they are discussing green space, and they have agreed to respond with recorded responses for tonight's questions. By the end of this month, the organizers of this evening's session will post recorded responses from the candidates here today, as well as those who weren't able to be there. And those recordings and other resources will be available on the Park Pride website by the end of this month. But back to the moment at hand. We are so glad that each of you took the time, and there are a lot of you, to join us this evening. And I want to hear from you by logging on, as you have been doing, from wherever you are. For a brief period, we are opening the chat function and encouraging you to share your name, and if you choose, what neighborhood you're from. I saw a few of the neighborhoods checking in already. And feel free to share the name of a park you love, your favorite tree, or a great memory on the Chattahoochee River. And you can give a shout out to a candidate you're excited to hear from. You can let us know if you're having a tech issue too, especially, but let us know who you are. We want to hear from you over the next few minutes. And once we get into the substance of the conversation, we'll turn off the chat function so that we can all concentrate more fully on the candidates and the vision that they're laying out for the future of Atlanta's green space. All right, let me tell you a little bit about how this forum is going to work tonight. We've got a lot of candidates, as you can see on the screen. So I'm going to share the format and the rules of engagement that will help this forum run as smoothly as possible and as productively as possible. There will be questions that I will be asking all candidates to respond to. And I'll also ask a number of questions that will be directed to a specific group of candidates. The candidates have been broken up into groups that have been based on alphabetical order. And all candidates will have the opportunity to answer the same number of questions. After the event, we will offer them all the opportunity to go on the record in writing for all of the questions asked at tonight's event, even those that weren't asked, and the organizations organizing tonight's event will share these questions and answers on their website. As for the actual rules of engagement, first of all, candidates, this is a forum and it is not a debate. So we will appreciate no personal attacks on any one of your opponents as an answer to any of the questions we have posed. And I respectfully request that you remain muted at any time that you are not speaking. However, when it is your turn to speak, to avoid any confusion, I will call you by name and invite you to answer the question. As you can see, we have a very competitive field here tonight. So each question will have a strict time limit, and I mean strict. We've got a timer over there on the screen that you will see, and the folks at home can also see. And we've got someone who will remain anonymous back here with their finger, not me, on the mute button. So if you go over your allotted time, you will be muted. If you speak out of turn, you will be muted. If you disrespect another candidate, muted. And you can't blame me because I'm not in control of it. Everybody clear? Give a thumbs up if we're all good. We're talking about Greenspace tonight, and this is going to be a good time. One final thing before I turn it over to the candidates. I need to mention that this is the work not of me. I get the credit because I'm out in front, but there are actually 14 environmental nonprofit organizations that have been working on this event to bring it together, and they have been working. They are Park Pride, Georgia Audubon, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, the Nature Conservancy, Atlanta Beltline Partnership, the Conservation Fund, Earth Share of Georgia, Eco Action, Georgia Conservancy, Piedmont Park Conservancy, Trees Atlanta, the Trust for Public Land, and the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. Thank you all so much for elevating this important conversation that impacts the health and happiness of Atlantans across the city. Show them some love in the chat box. So now, oh, thank you, you got it. We know how to do this Zoom. So now we begin the 2021 Mayoral Forum on Greenspace by allowing each candidate to introduce himself or herself in a 1-minute opening statement. I will call each of you by name in turn in alphabetical order, at which time you can unmute yourself. And again, you have 1 minute. I hope you can all see the timer. Is the timer ready? We will begin with Kirsten Dunn.
Awesome. How exciting. I get to go first. So my name is Kirsten Dunn, and I am a single mother of 3 beautiful boys. And I'm running for the 61st mayor because we need a resilient leader like myself. I am super, super excited to help our city heal, come together, and become unified so we can solve the problems that are happening in Atlanta and grow stronger. So I'm super grateful for this opportunity and grateful for Greenspace for hosting this. And let's go. Let's get it, Atlanta. I love you guys.
Thank you. Next, we have Nolan English.
All right, good evening, Atlanta. First of all, my name is Nolan English. I'm a candidate for mayor. I am a husband of 17 years and a father of 2 young people, 13 and 10. Ask that you all pray for me as I pray for you. I really do believe that as we heal, thank Kristen for using that term, heal, as a nation, as we heal as a city, we also need to pray that our environment heals from all the devastation that has been done in the name of progress. My background is I was an environmental coordinator and went from an environmental coordinator to an environmental compliance officer with the U.S. Army. So I've written everything from contingency plans, SW3P programs and whatnot for the healing of our nation, for the simple fact that it does no good to fight for an environment if we're not fighting for each other, and vice versa.
Thank you. Sharon Gaye.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Gaye. I'm a 42-year resident of Atlanta. Have the good fortune of living a block from Freedom Park. and about 3 blocks from the Beltline. So I have the opportunity to enjoy a lot of our green spaces and trails and woodlands just right from my house. I appreciate this opportunity. I really appreciate the fact that all of these organizations came together to do this event, because it's not just about parks, it's not just about green space, it's not just about trails, it's not just about watersheds. All of those things together create a healthy, vibrant ecosystem that makes Atlanta special. We became even more aware of it during COVID when we needed some way to get outside. And so I look forward to the conversation about how we can make that network stronger, more resilient, and more equitable for all.
Thank you. Mark Hamad.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in putting on this forum. It's much appreciated. Again, my name is Mark Hamad, and we have some fantastic, unique, and one-of-a-kind green spaces in Atlanta. Both Piedmont Park and Centennial Park are top 10 destinations in Atlanta for residents and visitors alike. However, the city has not been meeting their obligation with respect to these parks and all parks in the city. Crime in the parks has everyone questioning if they are a safe destination for them and their families. Parks in Atlanta lack proper maintenance and cleaning. Both the crime and cleanliness deter people from enjoying our parks. The status quo is not working, and this is impacting some of our premier assets. We need change. My #1 priority is to tackle the crime, and my #2 priority is the improvement of basic city services, which includes the parks. I will ensure that all parks are safe and people feel safe going to the parks. Secondly, we need to ensure that the parks are clean and well maintained and have the amenities that are desirable. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenny Hill.
Good evening, Atlanta. And thank you to Park Pride, Trust for Public Land, and all these organizations who put this together. My name is Kenny Hill. I'm a husband, a father of 2 young daughters. I'm a resident for the last 31 years of this great city. I have the privilege of living 5 doors down from West Manor Park, which I make it a practice to walk the new trail that was provided there, thanks to our NPU chair, Eunice Glover, and her hard work dealing with Park Pride. Greenspace is vital. I have 2 daughters and a dog, and being able to share experiences with them is life-changing. I'm a firm believer that when we expose young people to Greenspace, we connect them to the community, and young people who are connected to the community will not terrorize the community, will not be violent to those who live in the community. And the problem we have with crime is somehow and in partial ways results of people not feeling connected to the communities that they're in.
Thank you. Rebecca King.
Hello, I'm Rebecca King. I'm a long-term resident of Buckhead. I have a 10-year-old and I've been married for about 15 years. And it became more evident in the pandemic. Even before that, I'm already a person that enjoys the outdoors, but it was even more important to get outside, to ride our trails, to walk, to visit parks with not only my daughter, but our fur baby as well. And so I'm here and to run as your mayor to make our parks welcoming, crime-free, beautiful, where everyone wants to get out and meet their neighbors safely, especially while we're still concerned about the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Kasim Reed.
Good evening, and thank you for convening this forum. Great cities have great parks and great green spaces. I had the pleasure of serving as your mayor for 2 terms between 2010 and 2018. If you want to know what someone will do in the future, I think that you should look to what they did when they had the opportunity to serve. Under my leadership, Atlanta had the largest expansion of green space in the history of our city. We moved the budget support for green space initiative and for parks in the city of Atlanta from $25 million when we started to $40 million at the end of my service. That constitutes a 47% increase in funding for parks. We have a great deal more to do, and I look forward to doing the work.
Thank you. Walter Reeves. Unmute yourself, sir. Thank
Hello,
you.
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Walter Reeves. I'm a Roman law scholar, also with serious blue collar street cred. I would like to thank the people from Campagnolo, that is an Italian bar and restaurant at 980 Piedmont Avenue. And I would like for at some point their co-workers to come in here and just wave to you. This is the bar where Katie Janess was a worker. She was the one that was violently murdered in the Piedmont Park. And I have serious blue collar street cred. I've been a workers representative. And just this past weekend was on the job and on the clock at DragonCon Atlanta. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roosevelt Sears.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roosevelt Sears III. The L is silent. I am the third of two. And pretty much I was born and raised here in Atlanta, raised by a single mother, born at the Cab Medical Center, graduated from Jonesboro High School and went on to Georgia Military College to be a 911 operator for Clayton County. And that led me to opening up a restaurant and a nonprofit organization called the National Fresh Start and Assistance Institute. I also released a book last year called Rebuilding Black Wall Street. And this year I started an initiative called the People's Community, which we've been feeding about 1,000 people a week. And we're close to housing close to about 100 people, homeless people. And so pretty much that's just what I am. I'm the people's mayor. I'm a people's person. I'm not a politician. And so when it comes to the green.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Richard Wright.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for putting on this event. I'm very excited to be here. Again, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be the next mayor of Atlanta. A little bit about me. I moved here in 1997 with the GED. I worked my way up to get an undergrad degree and an MBA and eventually get a CPA license. And so I plan on using that skill set to analyze our green infrastructure. Atlanta spends about $151 per citizen on Greenspace, and the national average is $89. What is the return on investment for funds spent? We were 49th in the last park score. I believe that I have the skill set to bring about changes in our park score to increase it through the Office of Infrastructure and through the Office of Sustainability. And I will implement both offices to create more equitable parks in the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And thank you so much for respecting the time. At this time, I'm going to ask the event support staff to close the webinar chat so there are no distractions and we are all fully focused on the candidates and what they're saying. We're closing the chat, but don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. The premise that the parks should be safe, crime-free areas has been challenged by recent senseless acts of violence that took the life of Jakari Dillard at Anderson Park and the horrific murder of Katie Janess at Piedmont Park. How will you address the concerns around safety in our parks? There are 3 candidates I will be asking. Each candidate will have 1 minute. Kirsten Dunn.
Yes, so when it comes to being able to provide safety in our parks, it starts with us as a community as a whole and getting everybody unified together as one to be able to start back neighborhood watches, start back operating together as a unified community. That brings safety simply by everybody working together. I know I keep saying unity over and over again because it really is the basis of it. Just like we have several people represented here from different neighborhoods, if we all operate together, we can install safety. If we all operate together, but it takes us coming together. It can no longer be them over there with the problem. It has to be us It has to be us unified together, solving the problem. And I suggest we do it through neighborhood watches, through self-policing, not just depending 100% on the police for safety, but also us as a community coming together doing it.
Thank you. And again, I should emphasize that even though we're asking 3 candidates, all the other candidates will be able to address this question in writing. Next, Nolan English.
Yes, in terms of security, that is a citywide issue, not just the parks, but with the parks being such an asset to the city and a gateway for crime to happen, especially violent crime. That security piece needs to be handled at a much deeper level, more so than just adding 750 new officers. What type of officers are we adding? Now, what I'm proposing is this: we work out partnerships with our with military bases that are in close proximity to us. We have soldiers that are MPs that are exiting out of the military after retirement. They're roughly 37, 38 years old, and they have a time for another career. We're going to invite them to come and be a part of Atlanta's police department. They will secure our cities. Everyone will have a post of most vital interest, the parks especially, and they will be able to hold that post and close ranks on any crime.
Thank you. And I'll repeat the question. How will you address the concerns around safety in our parks? And that goes to Sharon Gaye.
Yes, as a board member of the Piedmont Park Conservancy, I'm painfully aware that the cameras that had been installed in Piedmont Park had been allowed to deteriorate and fall into disuse. That is a travesty. The Parks Conservancies can't do it on their own. The neighborhoods can't do it on their own. There needs to be a coordinated effort with the police department and the mayor's office to make sure that the security measures we once had in place are restored. We also need to be very mindful as we plan our parks, particularly as we're planning new parks, to make sure that we plan the edges of the parks so that we have eyes on the park as much as possible. The safest parks are the parks where there are a lot of people and there are a lot of people who go in and out and who see it. We also, as part of our policing strategy, need to make sure that we're implementing 21st century smart policing techniques and getting the police back into the neighborhoods and work with our neighborhoods to address the sources of crime before they erupt.
Thank you. To advance a sustainable future for Atlanta, we must focus attention on both our urban spaces and our natural spaces and resources. Atlanta's projected population growth of approximately 106,000 people over the next 10 years further stresses the current challenge of making intentional decisions regarding our use of land that support our local ecology, our economy, and our quality of life in equal measure. As the city grows, how will you balance the need to protect trees and green space with other city priorities, namely public safety and affordable housing, which are often positioned in either or terms? You have 1 minute to answer this question. These are 3 candidates I will be asking, and I will start with Mark Hamad.
Sure, thank you. That's a lot to answer in 1 minute. You know, first of all, the city has a lot of city-owned land, and we need to strategically evaluate. You know, we have a lot of other priorities. You mentioned affordable housing. So we need to strategically evaluate what is the best and highest use of that land, and that includes conservation as the best and highest use conservation of that land. You know, secondly, my number 2 priority is basic city services, and that includes city parks. So, you know, right now, the city has a good amount of green space per capita, but it's not always accessible. So a lot of people in neighborhoods don't have a park that's within 5 or 10 minutes walking distance of them. So my priority would be focusing on underserved neighborhoods where there's not currently a park and making sure that everyone has access to a neighborhood park and that improved quality of life that comes along with that access.
Thank you. And I will repeat the question. As the city grows, how will you balance the need to protect trees and green space with other city priorities, namely public safety, affordable housing, which often are positioned in the either or terms? Kenny Hill. And I will ask, Mr. Reeves, if you would shift your camera over, we're seeing people walking in the background, and to some people it could be a little distracting. Before we'll have Mr. Hill answer the question. We certainly appreciate it. Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, I think the question is a very good question. Affordable housing is important. Public safety is important, but green space is vital. There's 877 acres that the city owns that decisions will be made about what we do with this property. So I think it's not best to position it in an either or. It should be, let's bring that to the table with the developers, the conservatory, the people who want to see specific details for our parks being included. We don't want it to be after the fact. It needs to be included on the front end so that people who are getting affordable housing also have green space available. So it has to be planned up front. We can't move forward with development and then later invite the parks in and say, here's what's left. So I think when we communicate with the NPUs ahead of time, we communicate, as we communicate with the developers, everyone's at the table, and that's how we come to agreement on how we best use the land that is available, and nobody is.
Thank you. And Rebecca King, the question will go to you. As the city grows, how will you balance the need to protect trees and green space with other city priorities?
Thank you. I would work with developers and residents and not only use the tree compense, but help everyone to understand the benefit of trees. It's not just about activating our green space and making pocket parks. Trees along the area are needed. There's an article in Science Daily that speak about the heat that we have, and those trees, their leaves gather water and they end up resourcing back what we need in terms of a cooling down effect, and that helps to lessen heat islands. So that would be important to get developers buy-in so that they're not taking those trees as they work to develop to get the maximum number of units and therefore bring down the cost. Our pocket parks are just so important, and I feel like engaging our at-risk youth to help have them in buy-in, picking up and paying them and mowing during the season when grass gets too high, those would be helpful as well.
Thank you. Data shows that only 6% of Atlanta's land is dedicated to parks, far below the national average of 15%. Meanwhile, 28% of Atlanta's residents do not live within a 10-minute walk of a park. Recent acquisitions like Lake Charlotte, the opening of Westside Park, the continued development of the Atlanta Beltline Trail are a step in the right direction, but the city needs significantly more parkland. So the next question, how will you fund critical land acquisition needs for Atlanta over the next 4 years and ensure a funding stream is available for future acquisitions as the city grows? 1 minute. And Kasim Reed, we'll start with you.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to launch a $100 million fundraising initiative to be highly aggressive about acquiring more green space before land becomes so valuable that we can't do it anymore. In addition, I'm going to have a naming rights initiative to provide naming rights for park projects in the future, such as the Westside Park, which is now the largest park in the city of Atlanta's history. During my administration, as I said before, we expanded the park budget by 47%. I intend to do so again. I'm also going to support the renewal of the municipal option sales tax, which is also a funding source for ongoing park maintenance and for green space acquisition.
Thank you. This question will go to all of the candidates. How will you ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who cannot afford higher rents and taxes that are likely to result from quality of life improvements? I'm sorry. There were three other candidates that needed that question. Thank you so much. How will you fund critical land acquisition needs for Atlanta over the next 4 years and ensure a funding stream is available for future acquisitions as the city grows? 1 minute, and Walter Reeves, you have that question. And you need to unmute yourself. You still need to unmute yourself, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, I would like to point out that there's a lot of green space in Milledgeville, Georgia, and we really do not have a place in this city for criminally insane people just to move here. What I will do as mayor of this city, I will ban criminally insane elements, throw them on the corrections bus, ship them to Milledgeville, Georgia. I'm sorry, but it's come to that. We're going to have some law and order under Reeves administration. Look at these good working, hard, honest people, co-workers of Katie Jeunesse. I'm sure they'll agree with my decision and my points of view. And we'll see how many voters here in the city of Atlanta also. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir, and the next time we ask a question, we would love for you to answer the question. So appreciate it. And we'll move on to Roosevelt Sears III. How will you fund critical land acquisition needs for Atlanta over the next 4 years and ensure a funding stream is available for future acquisitions as the city grows?
Thank you for the question. So we won't be shipping anybody out or sending anybody on any buses, but what we will be doing is working more with people and communities and organizations like Park Pride, and actually taking their opinions and listening to them, and implementing some of their ideas and turning them into legislation. A lot of times we have these type of events and we have a forum and we listen to all these great things. And then once we actually get into office, we forget everything. So one of my main things is to make sure that we look at how funding is currently being spent. I believe Atlanta has all the money it needs, especially with the $2 billion budget that was just approved, or that was just, given out. So I believe we need to figure out where the money has been going and redirect it, and put the focus back on where it needs to be. And of course, we need trees, we need oxygen, we need to breathe, we need exercise. So not actually having sidewalks, not having those parks.
Thank you. And we show the time up there, so I don't like to be rude, so please watch your time. And the question is, how would you fund critical land acquisition needs for Atlanta over the next 4 years and ensure a funding stream is available for future acquisitions as the city grows? You have 1 minute, and Richard Wright.
Yes, I would look at our current spend, and I would also look at issuing bonds to pay for acquisitions of green space. It's a twofold idea that currently we spend about 2% of the budget on parks and recs. And so that comes out to $43 million. And so I would look at the initial first municipal bond issuance of $75 million coupled with a second one. And I'm going to really concentrate on working with each district, because each district knows its specific needs that it does need when it comes to green space. And so in combination with the Office of Sustainability and Office of Finance, we're going to really look at issuing bonds to pay for acquisitions and to nurture our parks and recs in the city of Atlanta.
Thank you so much. Now we will go to a question that all candidates will answer, and please answer the specific question that you are asked. How will you ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who cannot afford higher rents and taxes that are likely to result from quality of life improvements? You do have 1.5 minutes to answer this question, and we will start with Kirsten Dunn.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How will you ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who cannot afford higher rents and taxes that are likely to result from quality of life improvements. Perhaps an example would be the Beltline. You know, when you have improvements along that, many times taxes may go up in the neighborhood as a result. I hope I'm stating that right. And so the question is, how do you ensure that these investments do not displace existing members that are in the community who might not be able to afford those taxes and rents?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing that I would do is literally ask the right questions. A lot of times we're making assumptions when it comes to development and when it comes to even being able to determine where people are living. Do they want to move? Do they want to stay? So it's really making sure we're asking the right questions so that people are not being displaced when developers come in to develop areas and they're being forced to move out because they can't afford it. So being able to provide them with resources, asking the right questions will prevent people from being moved out of their neighborhoods that they were in originally. And also providing even further resources, because mixed neighborhoods are a highly important value. And it's one of the things that makes Atlanta, Atlanta. Having an opportunity for children of all different income values to be able to walk out the door and see a lawyer living across the street or a doctor next door. It's important to our family values. So just being able to make sure that number one, we're asking the right questions, and number two, providing the right resources so that families are not being displaced and they're still able to remain in their homes even while we're beautifying Atlanta and building it up.
Thank you. Nolan English. Hopefully you understood the question is, how would you ensure that the major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who cannot afford higher rents and taxes that are likely to result from those improvements?
Okay. For those individuals that do not have the resources, first of all, to sustain on their own because of higher rents, we would definitely look at the homestead exemption and basically do a freeze on whatever their tax is. One, that would be the first step we would make. The second step we would be making would be to set those funds aside so that way we can do some community building in terms of the houses looking uniform in the area. Not that they're cookie cutter, but they're uniform. You have new developments coming in and it looks new and whatnot, but what dignities does they give the existing residents, the people that help to build Atlanta, if their house looks dilapidated? Okay. Not only do we freeze their taxes, but we go in and help them clean up their own house, whether it's paint, whether it's putting roofs, putting a new roof on, or replacing windows. We would have what would be called a summer snowball, where everyone who has had service done to their home is now freed up from that labor to go and help someone else, you know, and we would just snowball the thing out in terms of community building. Number one, we want to make sure everyone in Atlanta is able to stay in their home. So we would set aside funds for that, freeze taxes, and we would also help them build their home so they feel unified with the community in which they live and to help build. So that way they're not displaced.
Thank you. Sharon Gaye.
The key is to recognize that these are not just parks investments, as the question phrased it. These are community investments. For far too long, our city has been governed by top down. Things are done in silos. People do things to neighborhoods rather than with neighborhoods. The West Side Park is a good example. It's a beautiful facility, but the neighborhoods were complaining that they weren't being listened to and it wasn't being planned to be part of their communities. And they were right. We need to do great public investments to build a great city. Beltline you used as another example, but we need to make sure that we don't just treat it as a silo activity just by the Parks Department, but you need to look at housing, transportation, infrastructure, connectivity, bike, pedestrian paths, the things that need to be in place to make sure that the park works for the residents who live nearby, and also that you continue to build enough housing that as the property values rise, as they likely will when you make great public investments, that there's enough housing supply that you don't have a run up in prices. So the key is to be place-based planning with our neighborhoods, not do top-down siloed planning to our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mark Hamad.
All right, thank you. I feel like I'm on a spelling bee a little bit, can you use it in a sentence? But I'm just kidding, I got the question. I think, I mentioned before, one of my focuses is neighborhood parks. So when we talk about displacement, I mean, what really comes to mind is you look at the Beltline is a great example. The Beltline's fantastic. I love going there. I think everyone does. But the reason it's so great is it's one of a kind. We really don't have anything else like it in the city. And anytime there's, when the Beltline was announced, it just drew so many investors and speculators to neighborhoods that were even remotely in proximity to the Beltline, and that's causing displacement. So, we focus on neighborhood parks and these amenities, we can start to expand these. So all of a sudden the Beltline isn't the only place where you can go and have a nice greenway to walk or bike for miles at a time. So when we start to connect neighborhoods and put in these neighborhood amenities, it takes pressure off of this displacement. And, consequently, it also, improves quality of life in those neighborhoods. And then the last thing we can look at as a template is the West Side Future Fund. That's something that's been in place for a number of years to try to limit displacement and keep long-term residents in their homes. And we know as we make these investments, we need to identify these opportunities like the West Side Future Fund first before we go announce these projects that is going to attract investors and speculators.
Thank you. Kenny Hill. Shall I repeat the question or are you okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Basically, how are you going to ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who perhaps cannot afford higher rents, taxes, etc.?
Yeah. So with that question, again, we're talking more like the Beltline, because usually community parks do not do a lot of displacement of people. But in the case of the Beltline, to Mark's point, the West Side Future Fund, our current mayor has done a great job of preserving legacy residents in that community. As the community has been redeveloped and prospered, people are able to stay in their homes. And we start with that as the goal for the rest of the build out of the Beltline. There are economic tools to use, like SSDs, building transit where you don't require parking for developers because the transit will be there, that lowers the prices. So there's tools to use, but if we don't communicate with the community up front, if we do everything and bring them in on the back end, we still end up with the same problems. So we need a mayor who's going to bring us together and give the voice of the community the same leverage as the voice of the developers. And that's why my candidate is so important, because I'm not supported by huge developers. I'm looking out for all of Atlanta. And that has to be the mindset going forward so that we truly have equity for people who want to live near parks and not only have to drive to a park to get to one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rebecca King.
Thank you. I would work with the private and public sector in conjunction. I would also put a liaison position person in City Hall, because there are so many nonprofits that are working so hard. And if everyone coordinated together, we would keep those people in those homes. I also feel like it would be important to work with Invest Atlanta to make certain, as others have said, that their homes are to a livable standard where they feel comfortable in pride and ownership, and they're happy with the new stuff that's coming in, and update their current codes and whatever's needed for them. I think it's important just to look also at the way we tax. I don't know that appraisal values are the best way. I think that anyone that has a 1-bedroom, 1-bath should pay X amount. And I think we could look to our colleges and universities and run the numbers on that study and see where we are. That way, when you're on a fixed income, you know what your bills are going to be, and you're not surprised by an appraisal value because of something down the street that has now moved you out of the neighborhood. Another important factor would be to look and see if they are capable of a different line of work and how we can get them to a different income level. So I would look holistically at the situation, not just one piece or another. I think we need to look at the resident and work with our neighborhood planning units. They know their citizens.
Thank you. Kasim Reed.
Thank you for the question. I conceived the West Side Future Fund. I named it, I stood up the organization and supported it. And I think the model that the West Side Future Fund has used to avoid pushing people out of their homes in the communities where we have progress and a rising economy is a model that we should expand. We need to raise private sector dollars to offset increases in the property tax digest. And we also need to have a robust grant initiative as well, so that folks who have given their lives to a community, live there for the entire time, have the kind of support that they need. So I think that we should take that model and expand it across the city. I also think that the projects that are causing this kind of displacement should be used to also create a revenue stream to help people who live in the community pay the increased taxes. In other words, we should set up a fund that's powered by this growth and development to help people with these challenges on an ongoing basis. Finally, I believe that we should set up an anti-displacement office to help people who are experiencing these challenges respond to them with expert support every single day so they can live in Atlanta.
Thank you. Mr. Reeves. And if he is not at his camera, we will move on. We'll move on to Roosevelt Sears III.
Okay, so pretty much, I was displaced before. I have been homeless before. And like I said, just recently, I've spoke to over 1,000 individuals who are currently displaced or homeless. And pretty much, I hear a lot about what bonds were given out, what funds were created. And I mean, it sounds great, but when I actually talk to the actual people, they're not getting the help. The money is not actually reaching them. So, I mean, it was great that Kasim created this stuff, but like real people are not receiving the assistance.
I just want to make sure that we are clear that we are not attacking any candidate. We're simply talking about your position. So if you could do that, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you felt like that was an attack, but he created the legislation, or he created the fund, or he named the fund or something. So it's definitely not an attack. Just, if it was someone else who named it, then I would have named their name as well. So whoever created it, we'll just throw that out there. But we need to actually speak to the people and figure out what their needs are, because the people were still displaced. On the Beltline, people were still displaced. Cascade area, people were still displaced. So people are currently still being displaced. Even with the West Side move, the West Side 280-acre park that was built, people were still displaced. So moving on. All
right, thank you. But we want, when we ask the questions, just want to make sure that we're trying to get a sense of what you would do. And so when we're asking the questions, I'm not addressing you specifically. I want to address all the candidates and say that we want to know what your platform is. We can sometimes know what's not working, but we want to know what you're going to do to make things work. So we'll continue with the next questioning. And Mr. Reeves, I would please ask you, for the respect of all the candidates involved, if you would stay on camera, because if not, we're going to have to eliminate your camera. And if you could shift over so that we could see you, and there you go. And if you could stay there, and please don't get up and don't move around. It's very distracting to other candidates and certainly the audience. So we appreciate you doing that, and we'll move on. I'm sorry, and Richard Wright, you need to answer that question too. The question that we were talking about ensuring major new park investments that don't displace existing members of the community. Please answer that question.
I think that there's an excellent opportunity to introduce some new ideas when it comes to displacement, and also revisit a couple of old ideas. One idea is just to look at really addressing developers and for any units above 50 that they set aside at least 10% for individuals who AMI is 80% or lower. I think another excellent idea that I haven't heard is when we talk to developers and when we think about the displacement of individuals in a certain area, have we ever thought about approaching the developers and the citizen with equity in the new investment? We never thought about giving citizens a real seat at the table with a developer saying, hey, if you want to stay, then we will do the AMI analysis. Or if you would like to leave, what we can introduce is a partnership with the developer, whereas the individual gets a lump sum up front, but also receives a K-1 and receives quarterly payments in the future for selling, so that the person and the community retains ownership in some of the new investment. So displacement can be attacked with some new ideas and also with a couple of old ones. And as mayor, I will make sure that everything is on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we had that question of all the candidates. And so Mr. Reeves, I'd love for you to be able to answer that question. And that would be, how would you ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who perhaps cannot afford higher rents, taxes, etc.? And unmute yourself, sir. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Reeves. Thank you.
Okay, displacement often happens when good workers like these folks here do not earn living wages. Other communities such as Washington, D.C., under the leadership of Muriel Bowser, she introduced the Fair Shots Initiative, which was a municipal minimum wage. And that benefited greatly hospitality workers in the Washington, D.C. area. Then there was a great city of Birmingham, Alabama, that took the leadership down south here. I was there over several months there at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, advocating for the Birmingham minimum wage, which was $10 an hour. Unfortunately, they were snookered by the state of Alabama, busted back down to $7 an hour. I then introduced the Athens Christmas bus municipal bill that would introduce a 15 minimum wage, $1 an hour wage for Atlanta airport workers. Unfortunately, that Birmingham bill was thrown out because the Alabama wage preemption law was upheld, and that wasn't good. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also, as we move on to the next questions, I noticed that some of the candidates were using acronyms or the initials for things that people may not understand what those stand for. So I know you all are in the thick of it and understand sometimes what these things are. So please try not to use acronyms and explain what you're talking about when you mention these initials. So the next question. Through the public engagement process for Activate ATL, which is the Department of Parks and Recreation's 10-year master plan, we learned that 24% of City of Atlanta residents reported that park facilities are not well maintained. And this is double the national average. Park maintenance and improvement related issues are the #1 reason that prevents Atlantans from using parks and recreational facilities. So how will you address the lack of adequate resources and funding for park maintenance, especially as new parks and trails are developed? And this is a 1-minute answer. It will go to 3 candidates, and we will begin with Kirsten Dunn.
Yes, so the first thing that I would do in order to create funds to even help maintain the parks more is do what, as a social entrepreneur, what we call the Roundup marketing campaign, where we get small businesses and even corporations to literally implement in the sale of their products a roundup. So if somebody goes to buy a loaf of bread, they can round up to the nearest dollar. And that'll be able to create more funds for us to be able to maintain our parks more. But also, as everything is unity with me, getting the city involved, getting the neighborhoods involved, getting even basketball teams and football teams and all our, as a homeschool mom, homeschool groups that is assigned to a specific park to go out there once, twice a week and simply do a cleanup and be able to keep our parks clean. Because again, it's us together. This is our city. So we can work together to keep our city clean. So, I mean, just simple initiatives. It's simple initiatives that we can do working together as a unified to be able to keep our parks clean and maintained.
Thank you. And we're talking about how addressing the lack of adequate resources and funding for park maintenance is going to be done by you. And that's Nolan English. We ask you that question. Unmute yourself.
Could you repeat that question, please? Can you hear me? You're muted now. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. How would you address the lack of adequate resources and funding for park maintenance?
How would I address it?
Yes, what would you do?
I understand that. First of all, by looking at the budget and making sure that parks are a priority. We don't breathe what comes off of concrete. We breathe what comes out of trees. And with that, we need to make that our priority in terms of mental health, the environment, and the whole nine. And look at the fact that we're all unified by nature. And if you show me your checkbook, if you show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. We have not made a priority of our green space. You know, I've studied Frederick Law Olmsted quite a bit, and understanding his heart toward what we are to be as a people, unified by the green space that's God-given, first of all, and the waters that run through them. We need to understand that we have to make that a priority. You know, as this city advances, certain amounts of whatever contracts come about, they have to include green space. And that's mandatory.
Thank you. Sharon Gaye, how would you address the lack of adequate resources and funding for park maintenance?
This is a huge issue, and this holds us back in terms of acquiring philanthropic and private donations to acquire new green space, because our private partners don't trust us to manage what we've got today. So we're going to have to be very thoughtful and intentional about modernizing our procedures, looking carefully at the budget to see where there are things that can be reallocated toward parks. We may have to spend more, but we're going to have to bring parks maintenance up to the 21st century standards that we expect of this city. I think there's some opportunities to bring workforce development programs together with training young people how to take care of parks and open spaces, and in a way that will give them a helping hand toward the future while also helping to protect our parks. But that has got to be addressed, and the next mayor is going to have to do that very quickly.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question for 3 more candidates. While greater public investment is necessary to build and maintain a world-class park system, private dollars are being left off the table. The philanthropic community has expressed to its nonprofit partners an interest in additional investment in green space if the city committed additional dollars to maintenance. Further, a lack of adequate resources for park maintenance puts park conservancies and friends groups in the position of compensating for a lack of public resources instead of leveraging private dollars to make good parks even better. So, how will you work with park conservancies or friends groups and philanthropic community organizations to ensure all available dollars are leveraged for a better park system? That's a 1-minute answer, and we'll begin with Mark Ahmad.
Sure, that's a great question. I think the answer is partially in the question, but we'd hope that the philanthropic dollars that come into the parks are being used for capital improvements and amenities And right now they're not. They're being used to backfill essentially what the city should be providing. It's the city's obligation to maintain the assets that they have. And if they can't even do that right now, even with some philanthropic dollars, it really calls into question the trust. So that's one of my priorities is basic city services. We have to get a hold of this. We have to be able to maintain the parks, make them safe, and make sure that they have the amenities that people want. You know, that's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to make the parks enjoyable again for the quality of life. And number two, it's going to build trust with the citizens, but also these groups that are so crucial. And to tell them, we can do this and we can execute, and your dollars are going to be used wisely.
Thank you. And the question is, how would you work with the park conservancies or friends groups and the philanthropic community to ensure all dollars are leveraged for a better park system? How would you do that? Kenny Hill.
Thank you. So I currently run a nonprofit and we provide housing for homeless single moms. But what we also do with that group of single moms during our program is we do a monthly cleanup, where we take a section of the community that we operate in and we do a cleanup of that area. It includes parks such as C.T. Martin Recreation Center, Collier Heights Park. So I think there's adequate partnerships available through nonprofits, as well as the friends of the parks, to where we can continue to earn the trust of the philanthropic community and deepen that trust. So I think by bringing people together, we'll find the resources that don't always have a dollar sign attached to them. I will partner with the schools. My park down the street, West Manor, is right across the street from Young Middle School. No reason why we can't have projects where the school adopts the cleaning of that park that's right across the street. So I think when we think from a mindset of bringing people.
Thank you. The next question is the same question is going to go to Rebecca King. How will you work with park conservancies, friends groups, and the philanthropic community to ensure all available dollars are leveraged for a better park system?
I think first showing transparency and how we spend our dollars at City Hall is important to show that we're good stewards of money, and utilizing that technology will give us better efficiencies in Atlanta so people feel good about giving and that public-private partnership. I would also reach out to our vocational and trade programs that are at our colleges and universities and high schools and get them involved in the work. Get our at-risk youth in those programs and set them up for success in life with those skills, where that they leave high school or leave college, not only with a degree if that's what they choose, but also with a trade. There's a lot of giving people in Atlanta, and I think activating our green spaces is a way to show people what we have, what we use, and cross-meeting with our MPUs. I joined MPUJ in a cleanup, and we can put that all over the city. Our MPUs know our residents and our citizens, and we can be out there being leaders and cleaning up.
Sorry. This is a live program. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I need to go back to that question because we have just been notified that Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore has been able to join us. We certainly appreciate her making herself available. And so moving forward, Council President Moore, are you there? Because I was hoping she might be able to join us to answer that question. Okay, I think I see her. Can you hear us, Council President Moore? Can you unmute the screen, please? I tell you what, we're going to move on and go to the next question. And when we see Council President Moore, we'll continue. So considering the multitude of new parks coming online, the infrastructure challenges of existing green space and the chronic understaffing of the Department of Parks and Recreation, green jobs training and workforce development presents an opportunity to increase employment, particularly among our young people of color, age 16 to 25, who are not college bound, while also addressing the needs of Atlanta's Parks Department and Park System. How would your administration support and expand green job training programs? And that's going to be a minute. We'll have 4 candidates. We may be joined by Council President Moore on this as well. And we will begin with Kasim Reed.
I think that we would continue the practice that we started under my leadership. We moved the pay for municipal employees to $15 an hour. That was done under our leadership. I think it's an important tool in terms of attracting talent. We also banned the box so that individuals who may have had criminal records in their past can now apply and compete. And I also think that we need to use the city's 33 recreation centers that literally run all over the city of Atlanta as recruitment tools to attract young people to lives of service in our park system and in our recreation system, because they can be powerful role models for people who live in neighborhoods throughout the city of Atlanta.
Thank you. Walter Reeves, how would your administration support and expand green job training programs? And please unmute yourself.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, the Job Corps already exists. It is a federal program. It is located in the Sam Nunn Federal Building right across the street from the MARTA train station at 5 Points. That's a very good program. As far as green jobs, I did something called similar to a WPA program, where I spent 1 year of my life building the North Oconee High School with Winter Construction Company. That's just out, this high school was outside of Atlanta, Georgia. We worked, WPA, Work Progress Administration, was very famous under the FDR administration. It was good for young people. It certainly didn't hurt me any doing construction work. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Roosevelt Sears. How would your administration support and expand green job training programs?
So I believe that every young adult or every young person should know how to cut grass, right? Or at least work in the yard. I started my first lawn care company at 14, and it's still in operation today. So I feel like, you know, knowing how to cut grass and knowing the essentials of landscaping, you'll always have a job. You'll always have money in your pocket, no matter what. If you got your weed eater and a lawnmower. To expand our workforce, we need to look at the job descriptions and also look at the age requirements and make sure that they're applicable to real life situations. You shouldn't have to be 21 to, you know, go out and cut grass or to be a helper. We might need to create different positions so that they can do ride-alongs, or they can go out and be like an apprentice or up under someone who is already in that role that they're trying to be in.
Thank you. And Richard Wright, how would your administration support and expand green job training programs?
I would look to do public-private partnerships with entities that are involved with Greenspace. I think that that's the best way to look at it. The city of Atlanta can input about $500,000 and go raise about another $1 million to really have programs that start at 9th grade for 9th graders to work their way all the way up through 12 to learn about green jobs, and also for our individuals who are over 18, give them the ability to be able to go to a 6-month program, then have a job after the program. We have to really look at how we really use public-private partnerships to advance our initiatives and learning and having people to learn about parks and recs and about how to have a green thumb will really help the city move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a question for all of the candidates. Equity is about creating policies, structures, processes, and tools for all people to prosper, including low income and people of color. So what policies, structures, processes, and tools will you advance in your administration to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities receive equitable investments in their parks and their green spaces, as well as public resources necessary to maintain them? And you have 1.5 minutes to answer this question. And we will begin with Kirsten Dunn.
Yes. So even when you're talking about inclusion, everything that you just said, it can start with inclusion, with being able to include and educate everyone on being able to start with equity, with being able to start with investments and just learn the information. Because oftentimes disenfranchised really goes down to not being educated, not being exposed, not being in a position to where they can actually learn the information. So making it available via inclusion and letting the city be the pinnacle point to include and to welcome in everyone to be educated on equity and on, because simple education, and it starts older, it starts younger, it starts with everyone. It's not just a matter of we start with the children, even though that's a highly important in the education system, but also even with older adults, even with older adults that are willing to come and learn. But the city needs to provide this level of education, and the city needs to open up and create partnerships with the community to be able to provide this education.
Thank you. Nolan English, the question goes to you about the policies, structures, processes, and tools that you would use to advance in your administration to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities receive equitable investments in their parks and green space, as well as the public resources necessary to maintain them.
Okay. I think the most vital tool I would use would be that of our human resources, those passionate boots on the ground that have been there. You know, the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, WAWA, with Dr. Nataki Jelks, Rashid Nuri, Truly Living Well, Reverend Richard Bright, Bobby Wilson with Metro Atlanta Urban Farms. All these people, we need to bring them to the table because they have really led the effort, and they're the unsung heroes of what we have now. We need to pull on what they know and allow them to lead. Being mayor doesn't mean you're the smartest guy or the smartest girl in the room. And once we understand that, you know, we really tap into the resources that are available to us or made available to us by those passionate boots on the ground. They can lead the teaching. They can lead the direction of this city. They know what's needed instead of somebody with a pen and a position scheduling monies to go places that they don't need to go and shortchanging other areas. We need to talk to those people that have been doing this out of their own heart's passion to lead this effort. And I would back them 100%. Those would be the go-to. Those would be the people I would look to as a think tank to give us direction as a city. Thank
you. And Sharon Gaye, what would your administration use to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities receive equitable investments in their parks and green spaces, as well as maintenance?
I spent the last 4 years as the Atlanta managing partner of the world's largest law firm. Just as we as a country were really beginning to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I learned through that experience is equity is not a thing that sits over here. It's not just a title. It's not just a person. You don't have a chief equity officer who sort of looks at things. It has to be baked into everything you do. It has to be part of the essence of how you make decisions, how you evaluate investments, how you evaluate allocation of resources. And it's because not everybody starts in the same place. And that's critically important when we look at our more distressed neighborhoods that have been left behind. There may need to be more investment. That's again back to this place-based decision-making process. Focus on neighborhoods and how those neighborhoods can be healthy and what they need to be healthy. And with regard to the parks and the green space, they may not have sidewalks to get to the park, but really look at a granular level about how the city's investments and management and maintenance can be employed to meet people where they are in their own neighborhoods and make sure that we indeed are using our resources in an equitable manner so that all of our neighborhoods can thrive.
Thank you. Mark Ahmad, the question goes to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the tools and policies I'm going to use, there's multiple. Number one, my number two priority behind crime is basic city services. And right now, it's not equitable how these basic city services are being spread across the city. So I'm going to establish a baseline level of basic city services that all neighborhoods will receive, period. Secondly, I want to invest in neighborhood parks and make sure that people have access to parks. No more than 5 or 10 minutes walking distance to a park. The third thing is cleaning up the parks and making sure that they're safe, that they're going to be a destination where people want to go. We have to take care of our existing assets and parks right now before we talk about moving on to new investments. We have to build that trust in the community. So right now, when we talk about equity, I mean, this is one thing that really, angers me, is we drive through, there are too many neighborhoods in this city that just have streets and parks filled with trash and litter and debris. And they have been, under-invested in for too long. And that really angers me. And unfortunately, these neighborhoods that lack investment, these are minority neighborhoods. So they deserve a baseline level of services as good as any other area of the city. We have to build that trust with every neighborhood and tell them, we care. No matter where you live, no matter where you are in life, we care and you deserve better.
Thank you. Rebecca King.
Thank you. I would look to our neighborhood planning units to let us know what their communities need. It's also visible as you drive around that we need reserve studies that give us the baseline of what is required to maintain a park. And look at the public-private partnership. We have plenty of businesses. We can activate those spaces, get people out of those offices if they are still reporting to work, and get them out and work with those communities to see that we care about them and we're not leaving them behind, and we want them to have clean and usable green space. So I think first understanding the economics, the dollar amount of what is needed is very important to work toward transparency and how we need to spend those funds and where we may need to adjust. We might see that a neighborhood has more support, so we would adjust our funds to a neighborhood that doesn't. But I think working with those neighborhood planning units, they can help us and tell us what we need rather than us spinning around in a circle.
Thank you. And I will ask the question to Kenny Hill. And what tools would you use in your administration tool chest to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities get equitable investments in their spaces?
Thank you. So this is another example of where we need change in our leadership. We need change that is servant leader based. As mayor, I would lead the charge in restoring equity in the areas that have been left behind. I do it now from a nonprofit standpoint with the lives of people who are homeless and restoring them, but also doing the community cleanups in areas that are left out. We've cleaned over 6 tons of trash out of the green spaces and the roadways. We look at the future and the projects we have available, like the Trust for Public Land, the schoolyards programs. I'm on 2 schools boards for instituting the schoolyards programs for Miles Elementary and Harper Archer. That's the future of bringing green space to communities. We need to leverage that along with the history of people who've been there fighting the fight so that we bring the new and the old together in unity to support these areas that have been left behind. So it's about leadership. It's about a change in priorities. Servant leadership has to be the priority.
Thank you. Kasim Reed.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What policies, structures, processes, and tools will you advance in your administration to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities get equitable investments in their parks and green spaces, as well as the public resources necessary to maintain them?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Dorsey. The first thing that I would do is address that the overall park system has been falling behind in the last 4 years. We slipped from number 40 in the, according to the Trust for Public Land in green space and park services, to number 49. That's 9 positions in 48 months. I would fully staff the Parks Department. I would move the schedule from the current schedule that goes from April until October, and park maintenance needs to be year round. That will help make sure that everybody has a clean park that is usable for their community. I will also achieve the goal that we set of having a park within 10 minutes of every resident in the city of Atlanta by launching a $100 million fundraising campaign to acquire real estate to achieve that objective. It's essential that we do it now because we won't have time later in the future because of the rising values of property in the city of Atlanta. And so we need an all hands on deck effort to achieve our equity objectives, and we have to get to work right away, maintaining the parks we have, expanding green space while we can support it, and making sure that it touches every neighborhood, every community in our city.
Thank you. Walter Reeves, the question goes to you. And could you unmute yourself, sir? Please unmute yourself, sir. There you go.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, there's a certain distinction between debt and equity, and there's been a lot of subterfuge on the subject. I would like to cite the Gulch project that was very sleazy. That should have been done better. What exactly happened was the developer used the credit line of the city of Atlanta to borrow money. That was a $5 billion using the city of Atlanta as a chump ATM. Walter Reeves is not a corporate sock puppet. And the city of Atlanta should not be used as a chump ATM. If I were elected mayor of this city, I'd renegotiate that Gulch deal. That was a very bad deal. That is $5,000 debt on all of us here. $5,000 debt on these hardworking blue-collar Black people. Think hardworking blue-collar Black people like being snookered like that? Of course not. Thank you.
Thank you. Roosevelt Sears III, the question goes to you.
So with over, I believe it was like $66 million is what I seen today that was allocated for the solid waste fund. And that's just throwing that number out for you guys to kind of see how much money that we're spending on waste, but we're not picking it up. We're not, like, I believe Buckhead just recently went through like a whole coalition of posting like their trash not being picked up. They had on ATL Scoop like hundreds, well not hundreds, but about probably like 50 houses that had trash that had been sitting out there for weeks. So this just goes to show, like, it all starts with the money. If you follow the money, I guarantee you'll find all the problems that we're having with the city government. The main thing is that we have the resources that we need, but we're just not utilizing them. And so creating more boards, and I would say another department for the youth to be able to be more included in the opportunities for employment, that would be very powerful as well. And then actually going out to the park. So my administration will introduce legislation requiring parks to be upkept at certain times of the day, certain hours. And there will be inspections. There will be different positions that will be introduced and available to the public. We got to look at this at a whole new level, not just where's the money and what can we do with it.
Thank you. And I'll restate the question because we really want to talk about how we're using your administration to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities receive equitable investments in their spaces as well as the resources to maintain it. And that goes to Richard Wright.
Yes, it's the CPA in me to look at the data and look at the budget. We're currently spending $44 million on Parks and Recs at $151 per person. What is the rate of return on that investment? I think that as a CPA, what I plan on doing is going to the largest 50 companies in Atlanta and having them adopt a park in certain communities within Atlanta. That will bring the necessary public-private partnership, the resources to each park that's in a disadvantaged community. We will do it through the Office of Sustainability. We will really review and do an analysis of the parks and the monies that will be allocated to each park based upon the city budget and see are we effectively spending the city's dollars, and also, again, have some key performance indicators to present to our corporate sponsors to let them know that, hey, the dollars that they are investing are going towards better and greater inclusion and also equitable parks so that the Southside parks look just like Piedmont Park. And so that can happen, and it will happen under my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes to three candidates. The Atlanta City Design, adopted into the city charter in 2017, aims to protect and expand Atlanta's watersheds, forests, and habitat in the face of rapid urbanization. It proposes additionally large investments in new parks, along with an approach to growth that focuses new development in appropriate areas while protecting ecologically valuable areas as conservation corridors. So the question is, how will your administration use the framework laid out in the Atlanta City Design to protect existing trees and preserve nature while growing and building our city? That is a minute to answer that question. And we begin with Kirsten Dunn.
Yeah, so the thing that was set up in 2017 is actually something that we can continue to build on. It's not something that needs to be changed. From what we can see, it has been operating well. It just needs to be continued to be built on and strengthened. So just being able to really look at any of the weak points, even though it's been strong and it's been operating, just any of the weak points that with watershed that we need to be able to increase on, then we just simply put systems in place. I keep saying, ask the right questions. Because we have to make sure that we're evaluating everything and asking the right questions, that we're going to just keep increasing it and keep strengthening it versus it weakening.
Thank you. Nolan English, how will your administration use the framework of the Atlanta City Design to protect existing trees and preserve nature while growing and building our city? Please unmute yourself.
I'm actually in agreement with Kirsten. What we have in place is adequate. It just needs to be executed continuously, and looking for those points of weakness and whatnot. Any developer they're typically going to come in looking for a loophole. We are to safeguard all loopholes and make sure we put a portion of every land purchase, land acquisition, a portion of that has to be set aside for green space. We need to get past just being green enough, just being in compliance. We need a little extra to make sure that we stay in compliance with what we need as people, and as citizens of Atlanta. Development could not take the place of our green space. We've lost a lot of trees through development. We've lost a lot of trees. But we do have our conservancies and whatnot, but more education needs to be put toward those. And that would be my answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sharon Gaye, how would your administration use the framework laid out in Atlanta city design to protect existing trees and preserve nature while growing and building our city? 1 minute.
This question gets to the essence of our challenge today. We have a lot of exciting growth coming to Atlanta. We've got a diverse, well-educated workforce, and a lot of sophisticated employers of the future want to be here. But we've got to manage our growth so that we can grow in a sustainable and equitable manner. And that framework really sets the basis for that. Once again, we can't operate in silos. Parks and watersheds are governed in two different departments of the city, but they both are related to our public open space. And so we need to make sure that the city operations are organized so that we look holistically at how our watershed, how we manage our watersheds, how we manage our stormwater utilities, how we manage our tree ordinance so that we can protect our forests, but yet also achieve affordable housing and really operate interdisciplinarily so that we can achieve all of those goals.
The next question will also go to 3 candidates. We struggle to slow the loss of mature trees and increase the planting of new ones. For the last 3 years, there's been an effort to rewrite Atlanta's tree protection ordinance so that we can better enforce the protection of trees from illegal and unnecessary removal. Do you support a stronger tree ordinance? And how will you address issues of enforcement? This is a minute, and it goes to Mark Hamad first.
Sure, thank you. Trees, trees, trees. I live in Buckhead, and this is, this is certainly on a lot of people's minds. One thing I'll say about the current tree ordinance is I think some developers look at it as kind of like they have a pass, right? They can just go clear cut a lot and all they have to pay is a fine. And for some of these developments, I mean, the dollar values involved here, that fine's inconsequential. So I think number one, we have to get rid of that. And, again, just where I live in Buckhead, it drives me nuts to drive around and you see some developers just clear cut an entire lot and, a new house or development that goes up takes up a portion of that. So yes, I will support a rewrite of the tree ordinance, and we do have to include developers and go to them rather than mandating here's what you will do. Include them in the process and say what's workable going forward with the developers. I think that will be most successful working with the neighborhoods, the community, and the developers.
Thank you. Kenny Hill, do you support a stronger tree ordinance, and how will you address issues of enforcement?
So that's a great question. And I think the first step we need to do is really change leadership around enforcing the current ordinance. The staffing of the team that actually does the inspections for trees is drastically understaffed. So the wait time for them to come out to be able to inspect what can be cut, what should be left as old growth, they need adequate staffing. I've called about trees myself when one was about to fall on my house, and it's a really long time because they're just a couple people trying to do the whole city. So we need to support that department so that developers have no excuse about it being a time delay. And then we need to just enforce the current ordinance that we have. And if we get the staffing right, then we can do compliance and make sure we're holding people accountable to what we currently have. It doesn't make sense to move the needle if we're not able to enforce it. So that's the kind of change we need from a leadership perspective.
Thank you. Rebecca King, the question is to you. Do you support a stronger tree ordinance? And how will you address issues of enforcement?
The tree ordinance in place, I think, does a great job if you have buy-in. And I think that's where we're lacking. I think first we need to start with the landowner. And if it's a change in ownership in terms of building, we need to work with the developer and the landowner and get them to understand the value of the tree and the efficiencies that will come, because with trees, your power bills can be lessened, it's cooling, you have more water that's retained in those trees when you take up the pervious space of road, the driveway, and things such as that. I think just penalizing over and over is not getting us anywhere. And we need to change that thought process and the behavior and strengthening our MPUs. Maybe it's when they come with the plan, we look at the trees and see how many are going to be left and work as neighbors to try to maintain that tree canopy and expand upon it so that we have the tree recompense that's utilized, but also save those old growth trees.
Thank you. Speaking of impervious surfaces like roads, parking lots, and roofs, they prevent rainwater from soaking into the ground. And when it rains in an urban area like Atlanta, flooding can occur, which may lead to property damage, a degraded natural environment, and even become a threat to public health and safety. Additionally, because Atlanta's stormwater infrastructure is aging, an increase in flooding is expected to cause damage to the city's water treatment facilities. A stormwater utility fee would provide necessary funds for the operation of a stormwater management program to provide for necessary maintenance and new infrastructure to address the impacts from stormwater. That's a long way of saying, do you support the establishment of a stormwater utility in the city of Atlanta? And if not, why not? 1 minute. And the first goes to Kasim Reed.
I'm open to considering it. I'm not prepared to go on record being in full support because I think that we can use money from the municipal option sales tax as obligations related to the federal consent decree decline. So I think that we can also partner with the Department of Watershed, which we did very effectively when we built the old Fourth Ward Park. Which is not only a beautiful park facility, but it's a retention pond. We did the same thing in the Rodney Cook Park, where you had $30 million from the Department of Watershed that went to fund a best-in-class park. It attracted $14 million in private philanthropy. So I think that using the tools that we have, we should make every effort not to raise taxes on the people of Atlanta.
Thank you. Walter Reeves, a question. Do you support the establishment of a stormwater utility in the city of Atlanta? And if not, why not?
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Water is a very big issue. There's been that Supreme Court fight, the tri-state water war between Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. And also we have this internal issue between Atlanta developers and Flint River farmers. And that's going to be a very big issue to solve. Of course, the water is under a Corps of Engineers. But the truth is, there's just not enough water for these rosy development projections. Atlanta does not have the water, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The question is, do you support the establishment of a stormwater utility in the city of Atlanta?
I support investing in waterworks, if that includes stormwater. Yes, at Birmingham, we did their sewer system, and it cost them $1 billion, but they did it, but it pushed them to bankruptcy.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next, we have Roosevelt Sears III. Do you support the establishment of a stormwater utility in the city of Atlanta? And if not, why not?
So, no, I don't support it at this moment. I would have to I would need to be presented with some more details on exactly how that would look. But at this present moment, I don't support it. I think that we have, like I said, more than enough money to do what we need to do. We just received, I believe it was like $700 or $170 million from the federal government. But we're we're continuously receiving money. So like I say, I think we just need to create a system. It's a part of my plan for the administration to basically create like a storm catch system to where the water would go underground and be filtered and turned into, possibly drinking water. But right now, like we just had a flood last night, yesterday. So we're continuously having floods, but we definitely need some type of contraption or some way to prevent our street.
Thank you. And Mr. Wright, Richard Wright.
Yes, ma'am.
The establishment of a stormwater utility in the city of Atlanta, and if not, why not?
Well, I am for the establishment of it, but I am against raising any taxes or having taxes first cousin any fees. And so what I want to do is really evaluate what we're spending now and also really look towards the infrastructure bill that hopefully will pass through Congress soon as dollars that we can use to address some of these issues. Again, as a CPA and me, I'm up for key performance indicators. How are we performing currently now, and where do we want to go? So again, currently, I'm not for raising any taxes or any fees. And I'm going to see what we're doing now currently, and also evaluate what we get from the infrastructure bill to be able to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The final question goes to all the candidates, and it will be a 30-second answer. The video that opened this session spoke of the need for a green space mayor. Please tell us why you see yourself as that green space champion. Kirsten Dunn, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I see myself as that green space champion simply because I am open to listen, ask the right questions, and not for a second think that I am the final answer or that I know exactly what needs to happen. It's all about unity. It's all about us being together and making decisions together. So that's one of the reasons why I'm releasing an app. It's called the One Atlanta app, and we'll be able to give opinions, ask the right questions, give the right answers from everybody in the city together.
Thank you. Nolan English.
Yes. The reason I would champion or be the champion for green space here in Atlanta is because I'm doing this for my children and my children's children. At the end of the day, it's not about a legacy for me or anything else. It's about what we leave to those who come behind us. I've devoted my life to environmental issues, even in the military, taking on additional MOSs with stormwater prevention. I would be all in for preserving that, because we are in dire straits. We only have 3 days worth of water, and a lot of Atlantans don't know that. That's in the
Thank you. So. Appreciate that. Sharon Gaye.
Great cities do great things. Atlanta's a great city. We've always had great vision to move forward, to take on big ideas. We're the city in the forest. We have green spaces that are almost unparalleled, certainly in the Southeast. And we need to be very intentional about preserving and expanding that heritage. And that's what I would do.
Thank you. Mark Hamad.
Thank you. We need to protect what we have. Right now, we're failing to protect and maintain our current green space. So the status quo is not working, and we need change. I will bring that change, and I've been very clear that my priority includes basic city services, and that includes parks as well. I'm going to invest in neighborhood parks. I'm going to make sure that everyone has access to a park, and I'm going to make sure it brings a greater quality of life to every resident in Atlanta.
Thank you. Kenny Hill.
Thank you. So we've heard a lot about what people would do. I would point to being the green space champion as a mayor by basically what I'm doing already. Community cleanups that we've cleaned over 6 tons of trash off of the streets and the green spaces and the waterways in our city. Being a part of the Trust for Public Land Schoolyards program at 2 elementary schools to bring communities and green spaces together. Those are things that are important to me for the prosperity of our city, as well as my own family. So that is what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Rebecca King.
As a Greenspace mayor, it would just be an extension of the life that I'm already leading, serving on committees that are built around sustainability and green space activation, and making sure that our surroundings are clean and bright and welcoming, and also donating, building partnerships so that we have that public-private partnership so that all can enjoy green space and have a great life here in Atlanta enhanced, because we do, and we just want to keep it clean, pristine, and neat.
Thank you. Kasim Reed.
Great cities have great parks and great green spaces. Under my leadership, the city of Atlanta was ranked 40th according to the Trust for Public Land. That was the highest ranking that it had ever received on that document. Additionally, we received accreditation from the leading national parks entities because we were moving in the right direction and provided the largest expansion of green space in the history of Atlanta. I'd like to do it again.
Thank you. Walter Reeves, Green Space Champion. Tell us why you see yourself as that.
Yes, I will be the green space mayor. 2,000 acres of green space in Milledgeville, Georgia, because that's where the criminally insane elements are going. People who should not do stuff to co-workers of the people here, like where Katie Jeunesse. That shouldn't happen. And criminally insane people would go to the green space in Milledgeville, Georgia, and banned from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Roosevelt Sears III.
Thank you for the question. So I'll be the green space mayor. I'm really the people's mayor, so that includes the green space community. But specifically, we're actually going to be creating 15 different committees and boards, and one of those boards is going to be the Green Space Advisory Board. And I would love for anyone that's interested to email me at rooseveltthepeoplesmayor@gmail.com.
Thank you. Richard Wright.
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm going to be the green space mayor because I have a plan. I plan on creating the Office of Infrastructure and the Office of Sustainability to be able to work on green infrastructure. And that's what we need, a comprehensive plan on how to land use for the environment. And I have a plan called BAGS, and that's Bettering Atlanta Green Space, where the Office of Infrastructure and Sustainability will work together to improve our parks and recs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. And thank you, all the candidates. And thank you, audience at home. We've got a great audience, a couple of hundred people, for joining us at the 2021 Mayoral Forum on Green Space. We have reached the conclusion of this evening's program, ending a bit early due to our smaller pool of candidates, but it's been great to hear what they've had to say. Before you go off to enjoy your evening, I want to remind you that the candidates will be given the opportunity to go on the record and provide written responses to all the questions asked here tonight, including those candidates who are not here tonight. Once received, their responses will be posted and shared by tonight's organizing hosts. Additionally, if you want to follow up on something that you heard, liked, or didn't, you can reach out to the candidates directly to share your thoughts. I know they would love to hear from you. And finally, I do want to give a closing shout out to tonight's, I do want to do this, but there's one more thing after it. The organizing host are the Atlanta Beltline Partnership, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, the Conservation Fund, Earth Share of Georgia, Eco Action, Atlanta Audubon, Georgia Conservancy, Greening Youth Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, Park Pride, Piedmont Park Conservancy, Trees Atlanta, the Trust for Public Land, and the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, better known as WAWA. We want you to go check these groups out. Don't just listen to them. Go find out more about them if you don't know, and support them. And remember, this is all leading up to an election that's coming up November the 2nd. And I just want to give you a little bit of information just in case you are not registered to vote. I happen to look this up. It's Monday, October the 4th is the deadline for registration. So if you haven't registered, you can do it online, or you can even download the forms online and mail it in. Early voting begins October the 12th through October 24th, and that's Monday through Sunday. You have to check online to see where and what the hours are. And remember, the final vote is Tuesday, November 2nd. But also, I want to mention that even though October the 4th is the deadline for registration, you may want to do that now, because in order to get registered, the application has to be approved. So I would urge you, perhaps as soon as we end this program, that you go to the website, Secretary of State's website, and please register to vote. It's going to be so important. And seeing as how we need those green space supports, we want you to get out there November 2nd. So please, thank you so much. Thank you, candidates, for joining us. Thank you, organizations, for putting this on. I hope you found this beneficial, and we'll see you next time. Good night.